Welcome to Natu Reads, an audio library of revolutionary texts. Glory to the Day of Heroism. Part 4. Testimonies about the genocide. Testimonies of the shining trench of combat of El Frontón. The day of June 18, 1986, at the time of being freed from confinement, we took 3 hostages from the RGs, 3 FAL, and 1 machine gun. The sergeant of the RG was dead in the block. The other 2 were injured. The 3 hostages were injured by their own comrades. On our side, no one was injured. Among the RGs that managed to leave, 2 more went out injured by stabbing. The Republican guards were attended, one of which was given a blood transfusion. From 7:30 a.m. to 9 a.m., there was a cohesion in this contingent. At 10 a.m., we found out about the good-for-nothing's reunion with his accomplices. There was tension at the Shining Trench, because that's where we had to face out. At the arrival of the Commemorates Commission, approximately 2 p.m., there was a megaphone call directed to the delegates, and that way they heard each other mutually. This one came in an hour later. The commission said that it was not official, but rather by its initiative with the permission of the government. The delegates turned in handwritten documents of the demands, suggesting the need to locate the families and lawyers, and that together with the representatives of the state, form a unitary commission to find a solution for the situation. In the face of what the Commemorates Commission was able to ask for, to have a conversation with the hostages, something which they did. It was approximately 3:30 or 4 p.m. when the commission withdrew. Now, the Navy arrived with boats and helicopters, and took their locations, by the side of the beach block of the communes. The attack began at 5 or 5:30 p.m. approximately. First, gunfire with grenades that fell all around the blocks. During this attack, they fell on the second floor between the dead and injured, an average of 5. The attack went on until 6:30 p.m., 7 p.m. They followed up with tear gas bombs. The ventilators played their role. At 8 p.m., there was a second tear gas bomb attack. They were responded to with agitation, chants. They didn't dare to enter. The man and weapon were shaken up. From approximately 9 to 10:30 p.m., there were attacks with mortar, bazookas, more forceful gunfire, grenade usage. From the means that we counted, there were 3 FAL that were mainly being used. Around this time, the back part of the first and second floors was destroyed, and the sides of the first floor, just like the pipe from the first floor bathroom. Then, out of nowhere, they resume approximately at 12 a.m. until 4 a.m., with gunfire, bazooka, grenades, in 15 to 20-minute intervals. It's in this final part that the bathroom of the second floor is destroyed. Of the 4 in charge, 2 were burned alive, and more than 6 fell back. Upon that instance, we picked up our arms, and we withdrew to the kitchen where the majority were concentrated, about 40 approximately. That's where comrades Alejandro, Teofilo, Amilcar, and Felix were. Until that moment, the only one that had a foot injury was Amilcar, but he was able to move around. At 5:30 a.m., they resumed their attack, concentrating in the kitchen. At 6 a.m., they broke into the kitchen. They make an opening. At 6:30 a.m., approximately 12 of us fighters went out to the block, but all were uncovered. 8 of us went to the kitchen, and 4 located themselves at the passage of the entrance, the wall that led to the bathroom and kitchen. Between the 4, a comrade with an FAL causes the Marines to duck low and initiates the major attack to that side. At 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. on Thursday the 19th, we accomplished making a modest hole to communicate from the kitchen to the hallway entrance and the bathroom at the same time. Amilcar, Felix, and 6 more enter. The kitchen and bathroom attack continued. Toward the beginning of the hallway, they cleared out of the kitchen. The Navy officers had tossed gasoline. The fighters wet themselves with water. Our orders and chants kept going as a response to the Marines, who wanted us to turn our arms in and give up. The attack continued throughout the trenches and the tunnels of the first floor. At approximately 1 or 2 p.m., I fell injured. I thought I had met death. I had in mind to continue the path of our comrades, and I also made my goodbyes with the 3 slogans that I remembered in participation for the action. Long live Chairman Gonzalo, long live the PCP, long live the People's War. From there on out, I lost all consciousness. I was told that I was talking, giving words of encouragement to those that were in the hallway. At 4 or 4:30 p.m., Comrade Nelson lifted me. He covered my wounds and told me he was getting me out alive. I saw that the fighters that could walk exited. The one ahead was Ruben. There, I saw Comrade Felix, who was saying, quote, "We're coming out with the injured," end quote. Quote, "Respect the injured," end quote. Ruben shouted, quote, I give up, end quote. Comrade Felix said, quote, "Go to hell," end quote. Quote, "We said respect the injured," end quote. So then he brought down Victor, Nelson, and I, and behind, Felix came down. For this, it was practically 5 p.m., and within moments, Channel 7 and reporters arrived. Now, on the sports field, they split up the most gravely injured to the Topico, the prison doctors. The Navy split the delegates up with a specific objective. They went on recognizing Comrade Felix, Companion Victor, Comrade Cirilo, and others. The doctors cure us, then the Navy takes away our transfusion. They torture us, dock us to the pier at roughly 7 p.m., where we arrived at 9 p.m. They process us, they bring us to the hospital, they attend us, they inject us with another transfusion. On Friday, we arrive at Canto Grande. 1. The prisoners of war, taking of hostages, fight together, ferocious resistance. The naval officers, total extermination. They didn't do it because of our resistance and because of the arrival of Channel 7 and the reporters. 2. Weapons, means. Prisoners, machetes, lances, knives, crossbows of 3 types, produced on our own. 3 FAL seized from the enemy, used. The flamethrower was not used. Vests, used. Vents, used. Marines, FAL, helicopters, bazookas, mortars, cannon, dynamite. For sea, air, and land, tear gas, flares, fires, and grenades. 3. The prisoners of war. Politically and morally superior in the common struggle, in the fierce resistance in the last moments while being tortured, songs and slogans. Marines. Demonstrated their cowardliness, their cruelty, rage, brutality, their fear, their dread. All the incidents demonstrate heroism, the example of communists and fighters, the value of combativeness, sustenance itself. Marxism, Leninism, Maoism, guiding thought, all by Chairman Gonzalo, guaranteeing triumph. Demonstrates how we pull laurels at death itself for the victory of Chairman Gonzalo, the party, the revolution. I express subjection and plain and unconditional reaffirmation towards Chairman Gonzalo, to his just and correct guiding thought and magisterial direction, guarantee of triumph. Reaffirmation of our powerful and invincible ideology, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism guiding thought, and light for the oppressed. The basis of party unity. Confirmation in the great development and brilliant perspective of our people's war. Finish off with a great leap and a gold seal. Finish the great leap that hinges the link for the plan to develop bases that will further develop our people's war. Nicolas, genocide survivor. Thursday the 19th, 5 p.m., was willing to go out with the injured. It has been a day of furious resistance, of heroic resistance. We have fought with strength, with determination. The cowardly murderers have not entered, nor have they had the intention to enter and take us out. We fought just like the party taught us to. We agitated and sang our song, quote, "We are the initiators," end quote. It is very appropriate. Quote, "If we die in war with our bodies mutilated, if we die in war with our bodies torn, death will be welcomed, because it is a dignified death," end quote. Comrades have been killed, but have died happily, with triumph in their face. Their souls will always be alive with us. We have also been relieving ourselves of duty, talking about everything that corresponds to us. Our revolution, our party, our chairman, of our invincible ideology, willing to die fighting alongside our comrades. That is how we've spent the last 24 hours of heroic combat. It has been arranged that we come out with our injured and the hostages. First, the comrades from the second floor came out to the soccer field towards the pier. Then, we exited out from the first floor towards the Chushi Plaza, where the injured and 3 hostages, one of them was murdered by the hyenas. They made us undress and placed us in the cells of the playa. Then, in groups of 5, they were taken out and executed. We have fallen agitating and upholding our ideology, our chairman, our party. They have not silenced us, not even in agony. They finished and dragged the bodies to a trench where we fought. They used it as a pit. Between 30 and 40 comrades were murdered there, and that's where we agitated until the last breath of life. I wasn't shot in vital places, and I was able to leave that pit. Then they tossed us into that pit, threw a grenade trying to silence us. Afterwards, they went under the kitchen and the bathroom of the second floor, which is what was left from the block. It was dropped on top of the pit to bury us. I didn't get out of there until Friday. The murderers picked me up and took me to San Lorenzo. They wanted information. I knew to keep the golden rule. At night, they discussed my situation, and they sent me to the hospital. At midnight, now Saturday, I had been attended at the Alcides Carrion, and at midnight, along with 4 comrades, we were transferred to Canto Grande to rot with our wounds. Then, 5 days later, they brought us back to the same hospital that we are at now. We are what the party taught us. My morale has been boosted, my class hatred has been exacerbated to smash this regime. This is what I've been able to write about for now, under these circumstances. Jose, a survivor of the regime's gunfire. On Wednesday, June 18, 1986, at 6:30 a.m., the RG and employees open and enter the blue block. As it went on, it proceeded with kidnappings. 3 RGs, one of them already gravely injured by the cowards' bullets, 3 FAL seized, 1 submachine gun. The guards responded with bullets injuring a comrade. He quickly proceeded to the entrenchment. Then, each one went to their combat positions. The cowards ran, scared. One tossed a submachine gun into the ocean. They left in the direction of the garrison. One of the cowards died from a grave injury, bullet. From then, around 4:30 or 5 p.m., came the Peace Commission and had a conversation with the delegates through some speakers that they gave us. They spoke with the hostages, then they agreed that they would go on to search for their family members, lawyers, and authorities of the National Penitentiary Institution of Peru to find a so-called peaceful situation. That's what we agreed upon. Then they left the garrison. After half an hour, the children of the Navy arrived and took their positions of attack and began shooting everywhere. We were enclosed. The first to fall were Ray, Saul, and others that were injured. Arturo, all in their positions of combat. At every moment we agitated revolutionary slogans that we remembered. High morale was present among the fighters. Around 6:30 p.m., they blew up part of the block that faced the back of the garrison. We fell to the first floor with some minor bruises. We pretended to be dead, then we went up to the second floor. There was no possibility to enter the first floor. Raúl, Omar, Armado, Cirilo, all with minor injuries. They ceased fire, returned to the garrison to reload their weapons. At 8:30 p.m., more or less, they returned and attacked with tear gas. As expected, the situation was well managed. Many fell under their murdering bullets. The bursts continued with bazookas and FAL. Then the walls of the block flew again. One by one, they fell with their fists raised high, saying "Long live Chairman Gonzalo," in response to the explosion. Then the attack ceased. There were only remains and dust left on the block. We attended to the injured. The ferocious resistance was expressed. The next day, all that was left was the part of the kitchen. There were many fighters there. Alejandro, Daniel, Willy, Ignacio, Osvaldo, Armando, Julio, Lucho, and many more. They centered their attacks in the kitchen. A majority of them died, always agitating in search of their enemy's bullet. Americo died with his fist in the air. Jonas was blown into pieces by an explosion. The ones that committed the genocide entered to pick us up, and we applied, going to them and seizing their weapon. It was Angel, Julio, Sabino, and I. That's where Albino fell agitating. We were surrounded. After 30 minutes, we returned to the same place as before. What I saw was haunting. Heads, arms, legs, blown into pieces. Then, Ruben had a conversation with Julian and shouted that they were coming down with the injured. That's what we did. We were dropped on the floor of the field. We were selected by the Navy officers. They shot Julian, Willy, Davis, Ignacio, and others. I subjected myself to the golden rule. We were beaten. They asked about our condition. Then, a strong detonation was heard. They had turned the block inside out. We were taken to their pier. We were beaten, clocked. They killed Peter by torture. Good behavior. The Marines asked, quote, "Who is Comrade Gonzalo?" End quote. Peter answered, quote, "The chairman of our contingent," end quote. The Navy officers killed him. They made us enter the vehicle. They took us to the Alcides Carrion hospital. They made us be given an external cleaning. I think there were about 15 of us comrades. At midnight, they took us out fully naked with a transfer to Canto Grande, where we were badly beaten and placed in the recovery room. Until about that time, we have not had any type of medical attention, except for soap and water. They had isolated us from our lawyers, family members. We were without communication. The injured have gotten worse. They continue with their plan to annihilate, but they could not. We continue fighting and resisting, denouncing their plan for genocide. They could never break our morale. Everything that happened was only from the second floor. Julio, a survivor of the genocide. Testimonies of the Shining Trench of Combat of Lurigancho. 1. Each time I take a firm position more resonant in the coronation and the success of the plan of the 4th Company, second part, destroying the bureaucratic state, applying the direction of the blow to the APRA, with its genocidal head Garcia Perez, pointing the tip of the spear against the reactionary armed forces. The success is outstanding. Developing people's war, victorious path in the countryside and the city, building the new society, the People's Republic of New Democracy. The biggest conquests, the hundreds of people's committees, the specificity of the shining trenches of combat, and, quote, the new plan for the genocide of the APRA government against the prisoners of war, end quote. The steering committee, assuming its responsibility, on Tuesday the 17th, transmitted political directions to initiate the joint fight. Everything was prepared according to plan. A reaffirmation was demanded to, quote, develop a fiery and heroic resistance, end quote. The general plan of operation was reviewed in a general manner in its 4 moments. The practice was reiterated many times beforehand. The responsibility of the conscious commands and disposition to apply what each device corresponds to. I greet the upright achievement in the party's meticulous plan, situations that praise the success of the party and the revolution. Wednesday the 18th, the initiation of the actions. 4:30 a.m. A prison employee is taken hostage. 5 a.m. Order of entrenchment. 8:20 a.m. Command informs the actions unfolding in the shining trenches of combat of El Frontón and Callao are successful. Here, the employees' answers are neutralized. They take measures to surveil over the roof. The movement starts to become regulated by the reaction of the information from the radio. 11 a.m., the command informs and puts more pressure towards the direction of the visitor's entrance. That is the time that reconnaissance spots a military helicopter. 4 p.m., they inform, the reaction will not come for now, it will be present at night. 7:30 p.m., Judge Isabel Marin shows up. She suggests that we give up our positions because she fears for our lives. 8 p.m. Everyone is on alert in all the apparatuses. 10 p.m. The members of the union present themselves again. Sanguinetti. He communicates that in those moments, an act was being signed that asked for both the director Lazarte and the union to be turned into the prison's conjoined command. 11 a.m. They displaced the block located on the side, quote, TBC 12:30 p.m., located on the side. 12:30 p.m., members of the military and the Republican form groups to surround the block and prepare the initiation of the eradication. They bring with them 3 boxes of TNT, a bazooka is spoken of. 1 a.m., they launch various attacks and shootings. Various parts unfold their attacks. First, they look for weak points. Secondly, they look to neutralize the resistance, launch poison gas bombs. Thirdly, they erupt with gunfire and grenades. They want us alive for total extermination. Password in military radio, BC-27 squared equals total extermination. Numbers of 8 of 14 of the helmets symbolize RM, quote, 18 division, end quote. The comrades' resistance and the fighters. All the steps for the plan were applied, except for a limitation in the 4th moment, the hand-to-hand combat. The agitations are forceful. 2 a.m., they open a hole where they try to enter, in the same place that lasted approximately 1 hour, time in which to search for their contingents and retake their positions. The hole is won. The reaction launches TNT and continuous fire. They enter a few steps in various tries. They take out about 7 fighters outside. They are the first to be gunned down. Simultaneously, they put charges at the door of the trenches, leaving a hole. 2:30 a.m., they enter through the hole by groups of 25 or 30 Republicans, a total of 50. They advance in ducked positions, shooting at half height. They stop and refrain in that rhythm. We progressively take new positions, leaving the barricades. Our only parapets are the columns. They position themselves in our barricades. They begin to selectively annihilate those fighters that try to annihilate them, or they are moving. They are surrounding us at an angle, and they are surrounding us in groups. The resistance of the fighters is heroic. Some begin to walk towards the hole. It continues in columns or in groups. The steering committee begins to come out in the group. When arriving at the hole, we observe 50 heads between soldiers and Republican guards. At a slight distance, 2 Republican guards designed to annihilate one by one, laid on the soil, they begin to shoot at everyone. At a slight distance, 2 Republican guards designated to annihilate one by one, laid out on the soil, they begin to shoot at everyone. There's an order to finish off and confirm the death of everyone. At that moment, someone says, quote, "Who is Diaz Martinez?" End quote. They pick up 3 fighters, they don't speak, they shoot them in the head. At that moment, one of them stands up and says, quote, "I know him," end quote. He signals. A henchman recognizes him. He was injured. They ask him, quote, "Where is Comrade Gonzalo?" End quote. He stays silent. They shoot him many times, the other as well. Then they start counting. I only heard until 112. They continued. At the same time, they made a pile. But they only made it to half. Apparently, they took the best shoes and stabbed some. Until approximately 5:30 a.m., there is another order to form, seems like a group withdraws, and the rest continues to go over. Someone gives a command and says, quote, "It's over. In formation," end quote. They spoke about Major and Company Alpha. There's a noticeable silence. All are stretched out, dead. I heard the sounds of cars by the back door. In effect, 2 military trucks with 4 soldiers in each. The moment in which I stand up, I enter the block towards the street until reaching the Pampa. The perpetrator of the shots against Diaz Martinez and others? General Torres. Information that came out from the order of this prison. 2. I give homage to the leaders, cadres, militants, and combatants that by expressing revolutionary heroism offered their valuable lives in the accomplishment of the 4th Company, 2nd Part, finish off the Great Leap of the Gold Seal, set in the shining trenches of combat. Smash the new plan for genocide. Acts that demonstrate to the New World that we are an example, immense bonfire that sparks all the limits of the earth serving the revolutionary world, testing one more time that we are the true transformers of our country, guided by our base of party unity, Marxism, Leninism, Maoism guiding thought, the weapon of transformation that empowers our historic optimism, because it is concrete, reality building the defiant People's Republic of New Democracy. Heroic comrades and combatants, the greatest children of our people, and the accomplishment of the assumed before Chairman Gonzalo, leader of the revolution, before the glorious Communist Party of Peru, before Marxism, Leninism, Maoism guiding thought, they turned their last drop of blood. They must highlight as well the infinite superiority, an example that will stay documented in the pages of history of our people's war, praising the condition of the prisoners of war. Glory to the fallen heroes. Glory to the heroes of the people. Blood does not drown the revolution, it waters it. Tomas, a survivor of the genocide. In the end, we found some military cars with some soldiers, then tanks, a truck, and also Civil Guard, CG, and RG vehicles, and tanks from both, and a water cannon from the Special Services, USS. The first to arrive were the CG. That was around 9:15 p.m. When we approached them to show the task we have taken up in protest, and with that in mind, the authorities from the NPIP already knew the same tranquility of the people and workers themselves was yet to be found. It's true, the population of the prison was calm, but our idea was to prevent the police and military from finding what they were looking for. At around 9:20 p.m., we were with the administrator, Mr. Lazarte, and he declared to us that the RG told him to write a letter requesting an entrance for the RG into the prison, and that he told them he didn't want to take on that responsibility, because according to Law number 330 of the NPIP, he had the authority as administrator for what would not be requested nor permitted the entrance of anyone without force. When we led Mr. Lazarte to the post of the RG, we found each other at the door of the external administrative block with Lazarte, and right there we made him note that the workers of the prison had taken up their duty. Lazarte, on his behalf, told him that in no moment did he request for the RG nor the army. I went to Canto Grande to let the rest of the comrades know about the suspension of the duty, and from there I returned with the others when they told us that the prosecutor was in the detachments of the RG. We went and found ourselves with an army general that was giving explanations in a scale model of the prison. He also gave directions with the agreement of another commander, an ensemble of the army, the RG, and the CG. In other words, making decisions. The attorney then told the general that he was going to agree on what was being generated, and at that moment, they introduced me to the general. I presented to him the workers' decision of uprising or canceling the job, and he told me, quote, "It's correct," end quote, but he continued writing the agreement with the prosecutor. At an instant, the prosecutor didn't remember the name of the colonel of the RG and the army's general, but they didn't give it either. That's when I realized that they were acting on a superior military order of the Joint Command. For that reason, the agreement is not consistent of the name of the Joint Command. For that reason, the agreement is not consistent in the name of the colonel or the general. At that moment, they asked the prosecutor for both, so that they could leave the office of the detachment of the RG alone, because that environment was going to be occupied by soldiers to make the raid where the terrorists were. That made the prosecutor so uncomfortable that he withdrew to find an environment to finish off the agreement. He said that he was going to complain to the national prosecutor. That was how we withdrew to the second floor of the judge's office, where we finished the agreement. This would have been about 11 p.m. The agreement was subscribed with the director, the representatives of the workers, and the prison itself. In the agreement, the attorney was to turn in a copy to the workers. In the first days of August, well, we didn't have a copy. You can see the worry in the attorney's face, and he always said that he would return to the prison as soon as the judge would enter his shift, because the judge wasn't there. They called him on the phone, and they told us that they were by Chorrillos in the middle of an expedition, and that was going to take a while. The truth is that the judge wasn't there. Only the attorney and his secretaries, only them. The attorney left at 11:30 p.m., when he figured that the judge wasn't going to arrive. One thing, before the attorney left, Salazar arrived. He's Aquesolo's advisor, director of the NPIP. Taking advantage of his presence, I turned in a document to him, letting him know that the job was suspended. Even though this was already known since 8 p.m., Salazar, to reiterate, didn't have a relation with the attorney. He only went to look. He didn't even exchange words with the military. It seems like his instructions were to stay a few minutes after midnight and only until then. Until 12 a.m., the RG enters through the main door without the permission of the advisor of the workers. All the employees that were witnesses of it know that the RG and the military, with or without resistance, were going to enter the prison. So much that some workers that were at the door evacuated. The advisor was also overlooked. They didn't coordinate anything with him. Then the RG enter. We were more or less in complete silence for about half an hour. Well, they entered with megaphones, bombs, with wick and all of that. Aside from taking some light cords, 3 large reels, and also extension cables. Also 4 boxes of grenades that said tear gas bombs. There was the first explosion. I don't even remember the time, because right after, there were 10 more that followed that shook the prison. Some comrades that were standing had to drop to the floor, because the shock wave was so strong. We, from that instant, couldn't see anything, because the military had demolished everything. I haven't seen anyone alive. Only comments between some workers of the prison and some RG, because of their friendly relationships at work. They told us that the convicts that had surrendered had been bombarded in an incriminating manner, and everyone received a mercy shot, so much so that their faces were disfigured. For this, technical personnel had to intervene and use digital fingerprints to identify them. From what is said, I believe that they would have turned in about 60 that were turned in there, through the lists, to see who was the leader of the Shining Path, SP, and who wasn't. They say that they began to ask for the whereabouts of Abimael Guzman and the so-called Antonio Diaz Martinez, and since they didn't answer, they killed them one by one. The last one that they killed, they say, was Diaz Martinez, because they say they recognized him. They say that they shot him in the head and again in the face with an FAL. A worker said that the next day, when he went, he saw all the disfigured bodies with the numbers starting from 1 to 124. He also says that he saw the prisoners' weapons, crossbows, guns to shoot arrows, and some bulletproof vests that were made of food trays lined with concrete. They were like bulletproof vests, rough, handmade. They also told us that they found empty bazooka shells, empty grenades, empty smoke and gas grenades, and that they also talked about when they turned in the hostage with 3 more terrorists that were also killed. And also, they said that they pointed a gun at an employee so that he could open the door where the terrorists were. In other words, the military entered from behind, and that's where a series of shootings were heard that wasn't an average machine gun, but rather an FAL, because the detonations were strong and immense cries of pain were beginning to be heard. That would have been around 4 a.m., more or less. At the same time, the hostage was escorted out with a brown jacket, covered so that they could see that he's a worker. And the one to rescue him was another worker that put on a white helmet with a red cross, except he was gunned down by the Llapanatic, counterinsurgency unit of the Republican Guards. It was about 8 a.m. when we found that everyone was dead. We were side by side with the attorney when we found out. They had ignored us. We were at a place that was between the hospital and the center of operations, and with that regard, we saw everyone injured pass by. For example, we saw an RG official pass by, hurt, and some guards. None of them from bullet wounds, but rather from debris from the bombs or rocks that rebounded. I saw all of this because I was in a part that was high up. I saw a guard that had an injury on a part of his head, and he was in the emergency room for about 15 minutes, it later running around, returning to combat to carry on with the massacre, saying, quote, "I'm going in for vengeance with these terrorists," end quote, and ran with a look that made it seem as though he was being chased by the devil. Afterwards, I saw about 3 or 4 injured guards, but they weren't gravely injured. I didn't see any get taken to the emergency room of the hospital. El Frontón. I was investigating in past days, and a good source told me the following. That around 7 a.m., 3 RGs are taken hostage, and when they wanted to pick up a guard, since he had a chain, he managed to defend himself and escape. Afterward, the prison attorney arrived with the prison instruction judge for the act about the situation of the prisoners and the RG hostages, and after they tried to talk to the representatives of the rebels who present a document of demands, among other things, of the acts of July for the year prior, and from October as well. In this case, they asked for added help. Now it was 5,000, and they wanted 10,000 soles daily. They also asked for the dismissal of Aquesolo as president of the NPIP, and the one responsible for the genocide of the 4th of October, and other demands, 26 in total, I believe. But what stood out the most was that they wanted to negotiate with a unitary commission between authorities from the central government, families, and lawyers. That's what they were asking for. At that time of the morning, the Vice Minister of the Interior had just arrived, Mr. Agustin Mantilla, dressed in a marine camouflage, then the judge of the prison instruction, the attorney, and the director of the prison that were working on the offers for the prisoners. They asked for permission to let their families and lawyers visit. They arranged to resolve the issue when the Commission for Peace arrived and spoke to them and suggested that the commission be unitary, in other words, talk to them. As soon as their demands weren't met, the Commission for Peace left. As soon as the Vice Minister of the Interior, Agustin Mantilla, indicated that all the civil personnel withdraw and that the Joint Command is going to be in charge of the prison. That is when an act was lifted between the judge, the attorney, and the director, signaling that they hadn't asked for the intervention of the Navy and that the problems were thought to be resolved without the included intervention of the RG. And if it had already decided what Mantilla said, they wouldn't take responsibility for what could have happened. It was 3 p.m., more or less, when the president of the Aquesolo prisons, that some signaled it was his Australia, said to the civilians that it was all in the hands of the Joint Command. It was around 6 p.m. when he signed the act. Immediately, around the same time on the 18th, the bazooka bombings began, submachine gun, and gunfire. The next day, the Navy finds out that nothing will be resolved with the weapons that were being used. They're not going to be able to intervene right away. And something curious, they told me that up until then, and the whole night, the terrorists didn't use submachine guns, the FAL that they had, that they only responded to their gunfire with slogans. At 7 a.m., a boat arrives to bring along weaponry, mortars, and personnel new to the moment. They say that the young students began to appear, Navy technicians, but with foreign consultants. That's when they install their mortars, when the prisoners began to use their weapons, killing a technician. Then they start to bomb the entire blue block and begin their havoc, because they find out that there was a tunnel that gave entrance to the majority of the prisoners. In other words, about 152, of which 28 or 25 were left injured. Then, there was a crossfire between both sides. That's when 2 officials die, a lieutenant commander and another whose title I'm unsure of. Then they kill about 15 prisoners that come out running, and they kill them just like that, in cold blood, weaponless, without any kind of protection. They bombard them in the middle of the way. At around 1 p.m., it seems as though the prisoners are out of ammunition, and gunfire only begins to come from one side. The Navy turns into the owner of everything, and that's when the hostages start to get rescued. 2 RG, and 1 that was dead from asphyxiation. Previously, at around 10 a.m., there arrived the general of the APRA, Senator Armando Villanueva, along with the Minister of the Navy in a helicopter, where the death of those officers is confirmed. That is when the common prisoner that was on the other side of the chaparral did not intervene, that with the arrival of Villanueva there was going to be ceasefire, and that they came out in groups to give them a sort of welcoming when all of a sudden a gust of submachine gun fire had them enter their cells once again. They figured out that Villanueva wasn't their dying savior, because he quickly withdraws. He wasn't even there for more than half an hour. At 2:30 p.m., everything was now settled, because at 1 p.m., there were no more responses from the terrorists, and that is when the Navy begins to throw bombs and dynamite at everything and turn it, in practice, into a cemetery for the prisoners. It's true, they tell me, that they had made concrete tunnels, and that is due to the prison's administration that made the piers of the Frontón out of concrete, cement, bricks, metal, etc. And a majority of the time, all of that material was given to the prisoners so that they could develop their own infrastructure, and they took that to their blocks where they began to make holes, because they knew that they were only going to make it out from there. The employees didn't enter their blocks, nor did the RG, nor did any other stranger. And they began to build underground cities to avoid being eradicated. A prisoner witness. Nothing and nobody can defeat us. With deep affection for the love of truth and freedom, I have nothing in my hands that remains of the shining trench of combat, except for this ashtray made by the prisoners of war, who today lay down their bodies, cowardly murdered, and the wretched of the earth, history and the masses, will judge these war criminals. Everyone in the world will see those criminals as they sit on the bench of the accused and are sentenced as war criminals, who today must be trembling. Nothing and nobody can defeat us. The river floods its banks. The overflow is law. There is a logic for reactionaries. Make trouble and fail until their doom. The people also have their law. Fight, fail, fight again, and we can fail again. We will fight again until we get the final victory. That calls us. The bloodshed is a banner for all the people to achieve what we so much have yearned for, power. Being condemned to win is a beautiful condemnation. We were born to win. This is already a great reality. They can crush us into 1,000 pieces, but they cannot break our communist morale. We are willing to die. Our class morale is at stake. We have to defend it, and we will do it with blood, pain, and tears. There can't be any other way. This is the only way to break them into 1,000 pieces, and we won't do it without going through a great storm. In their despair, the reactionaries are more unbridled, more of a reason why we have to do it. We must show the world the reactionary nature of the ruling class that they defend no longer exists, simply as such, but strictly to change the world in the image and likeness of the working class, through its organized vanguard, the Communist Party. Only war can deeply affect and move man in the core of his soul. From the songs to the cries, from the cries to the songs, there is no other way. Free and voluntarily, we have chosen this hard, prolonged, and bloody road of the victorious and invincible people's war that the party and our people carry out. So then, it is natural for the reactionaries to act like this. We were clearly told the viler, the deeper they go, they make their own grave. That's how the reactionary is. That's how he will be. As a combatant of this heroic shining trench of combat that has tenaciously resisted the bombings of the reactionary genocidal armed forces, I have seen how they disgrace our national heroes. They are brave to kill and cowards to die. They know how to kill, but they don't know how to die. They will see, they will go on knowing. The people will never forget the blood shed from its best children. Dear people of the whole world, your communist children of the war will not let you down, especially at this precise moment. We raise high the red flags of communism. We have a bright perspective. What can we do then if our final destiny is to triumph? The last word is that we are winning. We fight unclouded for our cause of communism. We will speak of other matters another day. I reaffirm my commitment to our revolution, to world revolution, with the blood of our people and of our combatants, with the blood of our communist comrades that runs in streams, overflows and overthrows the old and generates the new. I will never see their faces, their smiles again, but they live within my heart. I will be the bearer of their ideals. They are mine and belong to our people. I will follow your examples. To fight for our people, to serve the people wholeheartedly, without any personal motive, with total selflessness. Long live Chairman Gonzalo, the guarantor of victory. Long live the Communist Party of Peru. Glory to the fallen guerrillas. A combatant. Note: this letter is from a combatant, a member of the People's Guerrilla Army, written on June 19, 1986, the day of heroism, in the middle of the heroic resistance of the rebellion against the genocide, when the sinister reactionary armed forces, commanded by the genocidal Alan Garcia, assaulted the shining trench of combat of El Frontón. He delivered it before he died. We publish it as it was written for history to record it. Peru, 1986. Communist Party of Peru, Central Committee.